Guys, we got a treat for you today. We're here at my friend Chip Watkins' private museum, and it is absolutely stunning. Wait till you see the bikes and cars. Some of these videos, if you like these cars, stay tuned because some of these will be on our own video, but we're gonna do an overview of the motorcycles. That's what we came here to see, and this CCM is absolutely stunning. What year is this one?
1978.
1978. We just did a full video on this, so check for that. But let's move on to he's got so many beautiful pieces to see here. I guess we'll start down at the beginning, right?
Sure.
Now you can see these guys over here are hanging this CR500, or excuse me, CR250 from the ceiling, and that's how they do it, with a lift and chains. That's how they all got up here, and it gives puts them out of harm's way and gives them more room. Chip, this one looks familiar.
Well, that's because it came from Kaplan, and I pretty much left this bike alone. I didn't go through a full restoration on this bike. But, you know, it was signed by Jimmy Ellis, which is special to me. I mean, I was young. I was racing an XR75 when the bike was out, starting my motocross field, and I knew all these riders and reading Motocross Action magazine and so on. And this KTM was one of the most powerful bikes around in '75. And they actually had case injection in these bikes, which is a little before its time. And look at the cooling fins that they put on that cylinder. It is amazing to me. And they were still running, well, I guess some bikes were still running the low pipe at that point in time. But this bike, you know, Jimmy Ellis, he won in '75 the 250 National CC Championship on this KTM. And that was his only national title, but that's why I put his name on the front, and his number 7. And he had a bunch of numbers. But
You meant to say Can-Am.
I meant Can-Am. Yeah, what did I say?
KTM.
Oh,
They ran.
there you go.
He won the Super Bowl of motocross too.
Yeah.
In 1974, on this bike, he was the first person to double jump on TV. He connected 2 of the jumps, and then the rest is history. Now look where they're taking it.
He's a fairly big guy, and so it was. This bike, it was just so powerful for the time. I mean, there was nothing that could really keep up with it in '75.
You know, I've ridden this bike, and I'll put in the comments the video of me ripping down the street on this thing. That motor's on par with modern 2-strokes. It is no joke. That it's extremely fast. The thing is, the suspension and brakes. This was Junior's bike. He was going to run the AHRMA series on this, but he decided he couldn't switch from the CR500 to this, and we were more invested in the CR, so we sold this, and it was fresh out of the crate and never ridden when Junior got it. It was basically brand new, and he only rode it a couple times. He put the Ohlins on it, but what a fantastic engine. That thing's a ripper.
It is. It's a neat bike, and I just like its place in history. And I love the white Can-Ams. I wasn't as by the time that they changed to the orange color, they had lost their dominance a little bit.
Yep.
The Japanese bikes had caught up to them, but in '75, you didn't see many of these bikes, but they were the powerhouses.
The next one over here, what do we got here?
Well, this is it's a CR250 that I wanted to do a Ricky Johnson replica on it. And if you notice, in this particular bike, back in '87, was very advanced for the CR250. It had the HPP system on it, which a lot of bikes hadn't had yet. And what it does is it opens and closes the exhaust port, so you can run more of a fully ported motor without losing your low end. And it was one of the first with the disc brakes up front. And I happened to have, I sourced some Honda Racing engine covers, as you can see right there. It says Honda Racing on it. And that's the bike that really set that 250cc, 250CR off, is Rick Johnson on that Supercross moto thing, and that was a hell of a bike for the years. I mean, it was a dominator, and Rick Johnson was the dominating rider, and so he won the national championship Supercross. There's the #1 on there, and right underneath that Fox, you can't hardly see it, but it's got his signature underneath there underneath the Fox. I can't remember that far back, but, and the swing arm and the shock valving, and it came with Fox factory forks. You can see the diameter of those forks on that bike, and they came white, blue, and red, and that separated them. The problem that they had with the Mugens, and the reason there's not that many of them, is that they were so dang expensive.
Guys, I got to apologize for the shoddy film quality so far, but Chip's got a solution. We're going to put me on a ladder here so I can get a better view of these for you, so stay tuned. Apologize for the view, but we'll make it better. Would you just look at these trucks? My God. World's finest K5. Okay, I'm up on the ladder here. I'm going to hopefully not pull a Jeff Castine and fall off, but sorry, Jeff, I had to say that. Where were we on this absolutely stunning piece? Guys, this is a 360cc Mugen. I know it looks like a 250 Honda, but this is a full-on works factory bike. The frame, is this a handmade Mugen frame too?
I don't, listen, I don't know what's different about the frame. I can't really look at the tubing on the frame or the geometry of the frame and tell you if it's any different than a regular CR or not. I don't know that. But I know that the cylinder head, I think connecting rods, the piston, the cylinder, all that, you can see how thick the fins are in there if you can see that on your video. And to improve cooling, and see where that pipe is welded, that's a Mugen pipe. They don't look like anything else that came out on the Hondas at the time in '80. And the suspension's been revalved. The swing arm's a little longer. Look at the length of that swing arm in the back. And the handling was supposed to be improved, and of course they came with, like I said, the Fox factory forks, because they were the leader. The diameter of those forks in the time,
massive.
Even though they weren't, inverted at, got to that point, but those were the top of the line forks. And check out the front brake with the double cam. You've got a brake, and when you hit your front brake, it pulls both cams opposite direction, so you're pushing on both sides of the brake shoes instead of just one side expanding for additional power. It's a pretty cool piece.
Chip, the thing that blows me away is seeing the air-cooled motor in the first generation of the Pro Links were liquid-cooled. They weren't air-cooled bikes. So seeing this air-cooled 360 big bore in a Pro Link style frame with a Mugen swing arm, this is true unobtainium, guys. This is next level. I don't recall ever seeing one of these in person. What a fantastic piece. Go get them, boys.
Well, if you also remember, the 125s were liquid cooled first, and like Johnny O'Mara was running.
Oh, wait a minute. You're right. Yeah, you're right. The first big bores were air cooled.
Yeah, the big bores didn't run as hot. So they didn't worry about it.
84. I should know that. I'm getting old and forgetting shit. I might have Alzheimer's. I don't know from too many concussions, but yeah, the 83 480. The 83 480 was air cooled, and so wasn't the 84 480. 84 500 was air cooled, and then the first liquid cooled big bore was a 500. Yeah. Okay. All right. Dogging too many times. Sorry, guys. Guys, check out this Harley-Davidson Aramaki MX250. They only made these 2 years. Rocket Rex Staten rode these. This is a brand new motorcycle that's never been raced. No evidence of any wear on it anywhere. Frame rails are dent free. A couple of scuffs in the paint from it being on a metal stand. But this was, we bought this from a friend of ours who's a collector who had this in a climate-controlled, radiant floor warehouse with no windows, so there's no UV degradation on the original paint. There's a little info about this one here?
Yeah, well, there's 500 of these bikes made, to the best of my recollection, and when you're collecting old motocross stuff, this was one of the things that you had to have. So this is one of the 500 right here, and it's completely bone stock. It hadn't been ridden. It's a cool bike. And the thing is Harley-Davidson only did this for 2 years. They did it for the 78, I think the 75. They might have came out in 75, 76, 78. And at one point, the very first bike had forks in the back.
I remember that, the
Yeah,
prototype.
yeah. And they were trying to figure it out. But the thing is heavy, the handling's not good, and they played, that number 31 on there is Rex Stanton's number when he was factory sponsored by Harley.
Rocket Rex.
I just, and I put it on there. And I think at the time, to get him to ride this thing, he was one of the highest paid motocross riders of the time. And Harley was trying to put a team together to be competitive, but the bike is just not all that competitive. I mean, it's I don't know.
Even with
They
Rex
just
on
didn't
board.
have the R&D to get there, and they didn't build a two-stroke motor, so that's how all that kind of came about. But from a collector standpoint, it's a really cool bike, and if you ever see one, it's the only orange motocross bike that I know of.
Yeah, these are very easily identified in a crowd. This next one I know is near and dear to your heart here, Chip. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Well, there's nothing really super special about this bike other than this is where I did the most of my AMA motocross stuff with. And Yamaha came out with the monoshock. And this particular one, mine that I raised, had a DG swing arm on it, and it's called anodized. And the neat thing about this is that's also a Fox monoshock. It's an air monoshock. So you take the air in, and on this other side there's a hose hanging out, and you can just fill it in.
The shock's like 2 feet long on this thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a cool looking thing. It looks like a gigantic Fox shock.
Wow.
It's got fins on it that run vertical.
Kind of wish we could see. You can't see it. You can't see it though, right? That little hose right there,
Yeah, that's
hanging
your
down.
nitrogen fill.
So you were a local pro. You raced AMA local races around
We
here.
went from here. We went to Georgia. We went running around weekends and stuff like that. And at the time I was doing this, I was about 16 on this bike, 125. I was 16 to 18 years old maybe. And the DG gold radial head. You know, we did a couple of little things to them, air caps, and you know, all the things of the day. But that 57 was my AMA number, and
Very cool.
That's after I stepped off an XR75. I went to a Honda CR74, CR125, and then on to the Yamaha here. And it's a pretty light bike, and it handled pretty good. And so I just kind of stuck with the Yamaha for a couple of years.
What's this over here?
This is a limited production run of a Marty Smith factory replica bike that was put out. And as you notice, the tank is not metal, it's a fiberglass tank.
Wow.
And notice the up pipe. See, in 76, they had the low pipe still on the Honda.
That's right.
There's one right beside you.
Yeah, that
real
one's
clean factory one that's underneath. But this was that, it had fiberglass airbox. It had a different number plate system on it because the airbox was a lot wider. Look at the swing arm, it's different. It's a square tubular thing.
This is an actual Marty Smith factory bike right here, right?
It was something that he got into business with sponsoring from somebody to build this, and he was part of the process of selling these bikes.
And designing them, right?
And designing them as he had them set up. And right down to, you know, the gas drilling shocks or either S&W shocks. They were both correct at the time, in 76.
Swing arms looks longer than stock too.
Oh, I'm sure any aftermarket swing arms pretty longer.
Handmade fiberglass tank, probably.
Yep. And it's signed on the, I don't know if you can see it up there on the ladder, but the number plate signed by Marty Smith.
Guys, I got to point out not only the signature by Marty Smith, God rest his soul, him and his wife died in a tragic accident last year, but that's Marty Smith's actual helmet from 1976, I guess.
Yep, and the JT, well, in that era, I'm sure he had as many helmets as most people have, all kinds of sports equipment. But yes, and then that's the JT visor on there that everybody used to use back in the day.
What a piece of moto history you got here. Very, very cool.
Yeah, isn't it neat though? You don't see very many. And look at that up pipe and see how it's cut through the plastic, going through that bigger air box that I was talking about.
Oh yeah, goes on to a little stinger.
Yeah, it goes right through the air box
That's awesome.
and then just comes out. Yeah.
This was the first of its kind for Honda, right? Because everything was a down pipe like this one over here.
Well, Marty Smith can get anything you want.
Yeah, when you're Marty Smith, you want up pipe, they build you one from scratch.
Yeah. And this is what I actually 100% period correct 1976 CR125M looked like. I used to go to the Honda shop when I was younger, and I couldn't drive at the time. And I'd just ride my bike up there, and I'd just sit and stare at that thing. This was Honda's first. This is when they decided red was going to be their racing color, and that red and black was so. It's just so dominant looking. I just wanted one of those bikes so bad, and so it was one of those. You work with your dad, and he pays 50%, you pay 50% kind of things. How it ended up.
Freaking amazing.
Yeah.
That's where the obsession started back then, huh?
Oh, that's
50 years ago.
XR75 motocross Mac.
1973. I think that bike's here somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, I got a 73 XR75 stock. Looks factory correct.
I hope I appreciate this. I got my big ass up on a little ladder that I probably exceed the weight limit for, but it's worth it because look at this thing. Freaking absolutely beautiful. Eye candy, every one of these bikes. Tell us a little about this one, Chip.
Well, this is a Moto Fox racer. And Moto Fox actually had a racing team, and Tripes was part of it, and there was a couple other ones. And this has the Fox factory swing arm on it. It has Fox air shocks, the Fox pipe. Notice all the welds in the pipe and the different size cones. That was before computers back in '77. So they had to use different cones at different spots in the distance from the cylinder to design the power band that they wanted. And they would write down what kind of cone, what size cone it was from the beginning opening to the end opening to manufacture those. And each one of those is a weld going out of their factory pipe. And they put Simmons forks on all of their factory racer bikes. And the cylinder head is theirs, and just a couple pieces that they made. They actually made a lot more than shocks. In today's world, people can see them, the Fox shocks on trucks, and
Yep.
The side by sides and so forth and so on. But there was two brothers, and they were engineers.
Jeff, and what was the other one's name?
I'm trying to remember that. I'm gonna catch myself off guard here. But anyway, as with most family things, they had two different ideas that came along right around 80. And one took the retail side, which is the backpacks and the hats that you see now.
Yep.
And the engineering part stayed, the shocks and all stayed with the other guy. And so this was when they were both together, and they were doing a lot more than shocks.
Very cool.
So it's a very cool piece. And in '77 is when the RM started coming out with 6 gears instead of 5 gears.
Oh yeah.
This was the most competitive bike, 125, on the marketplace. And then by the time they got finished with it, this was a rocket ship back in the day.
Sure, they're very durable too.
Yeah.
Take a beating.
This was a deal, right?
What year is this one again?
It's 77.
I had a 79 RM100 and I flogged that thing for round the clock for 2 years, and what a machine. I can't believe the beating that thing took. It was a great bike.
But it took them a while to get to 6 gears for whatever reason, but they finally did it in '77. So this was the bike, and this is a Moto Fox racer, and it's just a cool piece to have.
Absolutely.
That was our intention. Everything else is at 7 feet.
Chip, this one's got a lot of history behind us. Give us a rundown.
Well, that's the 1974 CR125. The CR250 came out in '73, and the 125 class back in the that was just the biggest class there was. And this bike fundamentally changed motocross in my mind in the United States and other places. It had 6-speed transmission. It put out a decent amount of good power, And it was one of the Honda's first bikes that you didn't have to take the light off of, you didn't have to take and make it into a motocross bike, other than the XR75, which came out in 73 as well. So with the 6-speed tranny and all of that, the CR really set the tone for motocross. And so the reason I have this is this is a historic bike. And they made a sound. If you ever heard an early CR125 M run with that pickle silencer on the back of it,
Yep.
this one has one. Is 100% correct. It is a noise you will never forget in your life. And to see one of these for the first time when you're a young man, it was something. And it just got me further involved in the sport as soon as I saw one of these, and I had to have one.
Chip,
I was in a weird size because of my age for the XR75 race and
Yep.
125. But this thing was it was like a dream bike for me when I was growing up.
this is what, like you mentioned, really blew up American motocross. It was affordable. I think it was what, $5.99 brand new. For you youngsters watching right now who can't buy a 125 for less than $8,000, $5.99. You could buy this. It was affordable. Blue collar people could afford it, and it was very easy to rebuild, very easy to modify, very easy to maintain. There was no 7 moving parts in the motor. This is when motocross blew up. They actually had high school motocross. Can you imagine that in California today? They had high school motocross, and they had clubs that were high school, endorsed. This bike is absolutely a historic
Right
piece.
down to the front mud flap on the fender. I always thought that was cool. It says CR on the top of it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool bike. Guys, this is a really special piece. Chip, tell us about this. There's so much on this bike that's custom. Where do you start?
Well, I don't really know, but there was a gentleman by the name of Jeff Ward. Actually, he was pretty much of a teenager at the time, early teens. And he was pretty famous for driving the XR75 and sponsored by Honda. And he was a shorter guy. I bet you that guy's probably 5'4", maybe. I don't want to cheat him or anything, but on height. But he was a short guy, and he was a very fast rider. But Honda never made a 2-stroke 100. And there was a 100cc 2-stroke class in motocross. So they invented a bike, or made a bike for him. And this was a 125 CR, 125 motor. And they sleeved it down to 100 cc's. It's using a FMF porcupine head to disperse heat. The frame is made by C&J Racing. They were consigned to make the frame. And the wheel sizes, you cannot find a rim or a tire that size. It's got a 17-inch wheel in front and a what was that back one? I can't even remember. It's a weird one. A 16 in the back, and they did that all based off of his height and to get that thing going. So the bike was a special bike, C&H pipe on the back side of it. And this is what he went out and he just ruled the 100 class with this bike. And he got a lot of flack saying he was racing a 125 motor sleeved down, but it was true in that sense. It was 100 cc's. But that's what Jeff Ward went there. And on the back side is his helmet, number 3X.
Oh, wow. We got to check that out.
And that was actually, and the 125 CR forks, forgot about that. And they were cut down at the top and rethreaded with air caps.
Wow.
They had the brass air caps put in there because he wasn't tall enough to run the bike wasn't tall enough to run the regular 125 forks.
Jeff is quite the talented guy. It must have been a joy to behold watching him ripping one of these.
I even like even the aluminum motor mounts. Look at the motor mount, the front motor mount. It's a piece of billet there that they just cut out to make it work in that C&J frame.
Guys, I saw this bike earlier.
XR75 gas tank.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I did not notice that.
For XR75 gas tank, same shape, same tank. And I would venture to say the seat is as well. But it's sitting on top of the C&J.
Yeah, I see that. You know what blows me away about this bike? Because I saw it earlier, and I gave it a quick once over, but I thought it was a CR125 frame with smaller wheels and a C&J swing arm.
It's a C&J custom-made frame.
This is as close to a Works Factory bike as you could possibly get without getting a Works Factory bike. It's the frame,
There's one
everything.
right behind you. And if you look right here, you see how the frame is made right here?
Yep.
And some of the other stuff right underneath you, you're standing underneath that CR125, you can see the difference in the way that the whole setup
Oh wow!
was done.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Completely different.
It's a one-off frame, and that whole bike was created for Jeff Ford.
They only made one of these frames?
No, I think there's like 3 or 6 of those bikes, depending on who you talk to.
Holy moly!
And this is one of them. And then you also have your S&W shocks. And for those that are close to my age, you can remember when S&W had those shocks. They're not nitrogen, they're just oil shocks, but they had special valving for motocross.
Chip, you were born in what, 62?
I was born in 61.
61. I was born in 65. For us, this is just like, and if anybody from that, any youngsters that are watching, this is a piece of moto history right here. Jeff Ford's a legend, and every bike we've looked at so far is a piece of moto history. But this one, the 100 class, that was it was just a D class or the 125 class that everybody got their start in racing, and that is a true Works CR100. Just a fantastic piece.
And you can come around this side and walk around this Jeep and look at see the 3X helmet.
Oh wow! Now that's an actual Jeff Ford. That's not a replica. This is Jeff Ford's bike and Jeff Ford's helmet.
Yeah, that's one of those helmets.
Jeff Ford himself would probably be excited to see this. I'm sure he would. Maybe he'll see this video. I don't know.
I don't know.
He's still out there.
JT Racing. Yeah, well, you gotta, people know things and people collect things. You'd be surprised at what people collect.
There's some videos of Jeff Ford. I'll do a snapshot of this and put it on our Instagram and tag him in it. But
See the XR75 gas cap on that thing?
yeah, the big chrome gas cap. Look at that.
They just made it work. And the funny thing about it is, if you also look at where the kickstarter's sticking out, see how far it is away from the bike itself?
Oh yeah, look at that.
Now look at the CR125 over here, and you see how much wider the frame was up top.
Oh, I see how yeah.
The motor,
Look
they
at
just wedged that motor in a skinnier, smaller frame.
I bet you Wardy flew on this, and I can only imagine.
He flew on everything he was
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
whether it be
Anything.
Kawasaki, Honda,
Yeah, it didn't
whatever.
matter really. Give
And
him
then he
2
went
wheels
on
and
the
engine.
Grand Prix not to do too bad.
Yeah, he's just one of those uniquely talented individuals that most mere mortals could never ride like that. This next one here is what is this?
That,
On any Sunday, there's a clue.
that is a 1974 Husqvarna WR 400, and when I was growing up, they made this movie called On Any Sunday, and it was all about this. Now you got to remember, I'm in this thing deep, and everything about me is reading dirt bike and motocross action and all this, and then they made a movie about motorcycles, and in the end of the movie, there was these Husqvarnas, which I thought were so cool because they had the mirror on the tank, and they were very highly engineered motors. And I just wanted. This reminds me of that movie, and it's a replica of the one that Malcolm Smith and Steve McQueen rode in that movie.
That's awesome.
And so that's what that bike's doing here. And again, all these bikes, they mean different things to different people. But to me, I remember my dad taking me down there and seeing that movie. And I remember those Husqvarnas. And later on in life, I wanted one. And I actually even have the CD taped up there on the mirror there of that
Oh, that's awesome.
movie.
Check it out, guys.
It's got a CD in it. It's not just
If you youngsters have not seen this movie, you need to buy it and watch it. And you old timers, if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it
There's
again.
a CD right there.
It's an incredibly cool movie.
Yeah,
And a
and
lot
then they
of-
went on to make a second one or whatever. But
Yeah.
anyway, it had an impact in my life. That's what that particular bike's doing.
Very cool. Looks like it just came out of the factory. in 1974. Then we've got a Montesa.
Yeah, this is a Montesa Coda. It's a 350 two-stroke bike. High ground clearance. If you look at the bottom of the tires and you look at the thing, and Montesa basically ruled the trials bike era. In fact, they still do trials bikes today with Honda engines, which are fuel-injected four-strokes. And so that's just, it's part of my memory. I never was a trials rider, but I probably did some stupid stuff acting like it, but I wasn't a competitive trials rider. I was more about speed. But that whole thing, look in the, see how it's one piece so that you can move around on the bike? Look, go behind the seat all the way to the front where the forks are. This one piece of fiberglass.
Wow.
So you could slide up and down it. And you see that tube running down right behind the Montesa logo?
Yep.
That's your fuel gauge.
Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah,
That's your
it's
fuel
a
gauge
crazy,
right there.
It's the craziest thing in the world, and
It works.
yeah, it works. And so I've always kind of liked the trials bikes, and I don't know. I've got one upstairs as well. I've got another one coming, and between Montesa and there was a company called OSA.
Yep.
And another one, Bultaco, that they really ruled the trials world. So anyway, that's what that bike's doing here.
Guys, this right here is not a Carroll Shelby replica. This is the real thing. This one deserves its own video. One of 312 of them, am I correct?
Well, I don't know how many they made. I know that this is the, if you look inside the car here, this is all you need to know about Shelby's, the real ones. This is the real insignia's plate, and this is CSX 4312. That's a 312 CSX 427 car.
What a work of art.
Yeah, it's all aluminum. It's never been painted since it was new. The engine's a 65 side oiler, 427 Ford motor. It's producing about 520 horsepower, something like that. And this car is so light, you can literally watch it with one hand, one finger, and I'm moving the car.
Wow.
And it's just a raw car. There's no power steering. There's no power brakes. There is disc brakes all around these old Cobras, but your foot is the hydraulics.
You got to be a real driver to handle this thing.
You push it, you push the fluid through, and it goes on. And it'll skid all four tires, but that's because it's a light car. It's got a real race cap on the back, steel cap. If you just go to the gas station and you don't have any way to break the seal on there, it's going to come back in your face. And all the some of the gauges are filled with liquid, and it's a right to left. If you notice the gauge in the center there, this one's set up for Le Mans racing. And this stuff right here, this thing's so old that is your fire extinguisher system for the deal, and it did have halon in it. They ran halon back in the time. That sucks oxygen out of the air, and it will also kill a human being if you breathe it in. It'll take all the oxygen out.
It'll kill you?
Oh yeah, they don't use that stuff now, but back in the day, that's what they used for fire suppression. And you had to have, for Le Mans, you had to have an extra. It's got 3 fuel pumps. It's got one that works off the motor and 2 that work off on each side of the gas fuel tank, left and right. And it's got a 32-gallon fuel cell in it that runs across the back.
Wow.
And
That's a lot of fuel for a small car, but it probably sucked it up.
And he was just all about racing, Carroll Shelby. And this canister right here is required. It takes some more contaminants that could get onto the racetrack, and it comes up through, and it's a catch tank. And this is all your hydraulics over here, your brakes, your clutch, and etc. And there's your overflow, which is required for the Le Mans copies. And there you go.
What a beautiful piece. This really deserves its own video because it's such a unique, valuable car. But right behind it, we have hanging a stunning Bultaco. It looks like it just came out of the box.
Yeah, I always liked the Bultacos because they were pretty, not because they were the best motocross bike. And this happens to be, I put Jim Pomeroy's number on it because he actually won the 250cc championship back in '74, which this bike is a '74. And the quality of workmanship in here, if you look at the welds on this bike, they are phenomenal. Look at the safety wiring right there on the bolts. And everything is, the welds are great. And when you rebuild one of these, you will notice how well that everything's milled. It is milled to the finest degree. And everything is polished aluminum. It's not like the cast painted black stuff of the Japanese bikes. And they weren't all super competitive. Pomeroy seemed to be able to handle it. I would love to see what he would have done on a Can-Am or something of the time, the same era.
Yeah.
But anyway, I always thought they were just beautiful bikes. I love the powder blue, sky blue, whatever you want to call it, paint, and it's just something that I think I always wanted for my collection. I mean,
Senor Bulto took great pride in his machines and the craftsmanship of his parent.
Look how the holes are, the bolts are countersunk instead of just hanging off the side of the case. You know, for those that hunt, you can look at Spanish shotguns and see the detail work in those things. I mean, they were really craftsmen. They were true craftsmen.
Spectacular piece.
And even notice where it covers the airbox, the gaps. It's just astounding to me the amount of detail that they do in their bikes.
Did you do a frame up on this one? Or?
No, this one came really clean, and I bought it from a guy in California. But I cleaned it up further, and you know, got it to what I consider to my level. And but I kept as much of what he had done as possible. But it was in great shape when I got it.
Beautiful piece. Upstairs, he's got some gems hidden away up there. We'll go take a look at them.
Come on, dogs, don't trip anybody.
I think we could, quite a few of us could say this is the one that started it all.
Yeah, well, that was in my case. I had a Trail 50 prior to that. As soon as I got on this thing and motocross was coming across this country, that was the bike. And again, this came out before the 125 Elsinore, and it came out the same year as the CR250M. And it was really like the first mini bike. Yamaha had made an MX-80 at the same time, but this one just, it had better forks, and the motor was really, really indestructible just about. And later on in life, my bike that I started on turned into be my pit bike at the motocross races, and I put a DG monoshock frame on it.
Nice.
All that kind of stuff. But and these things make a noise. If you've ever heard a stock XR75, they make this vibrating noise, and you just never forget it. And anyway, it's a really cool starter bike, and you could buy it right off the Honda showroom floor. And I just like the 73 also because it had the 2 red racing stripes going down the gas tank there.
Yeah, let me see if I can get up top here and get a better view of that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it with a different angle. Hey!
Here's a better view from the top looking down. We actually have one of these in our inventory that is 100% bone stock original, unrestored, with a little bit of patina on it. Probably the nicest, cleanest original one I've ever seen. We just did a video last week, and what a piece of moto history there. And like that lit the flame for many that eventually ended up this one right here, which I have one of these in '97 on the back of my truck today. Still love riding these to this today. I don't think a better motocross engine has ever been invented, and I've ridden all of them. So I guess I can say that with a little bit of with a little bit of experience to back it up. Just a phenomenal motor. You can lug this thing, you can rev it to the moon, which for this is about 7,500, is about as high as it'll rev. More horsepower and torque than a 2023 450, about 20% more torque on our dyno than a new Honda CRF or Yamaha YZ right out of the box 30 years ago. Tell us a little about this one, Chip.
Well, this was the last type of bike that I raced, the 500. And they were just insanely powerful. And I mean, I think this bike, along with maybe one or two other manufacturers, is what eventually shut down the 500 two-stroke class. They were making so much power, it was getting out of control. And if you notice on this particular one, the reason that I like this particular year is because it has a Keenan flat side carburetor.
Yep, PWK Air Striker.
Yep. And they would let the airflow go around there quicker than the round needles.
We take that same carb style and put it on the brand new gases and KTM's. We take the Mikunis off and put a new air striker on there, and it works better. That's a phenomenal carburetor.
A great carburetor. And this whole setup that they did here, and this one's got a pro circuit pipe on it, and you know, it's a monster. The only thing I can tell you is when you're racing one of these, is you can't get lazy. On a 250 and a 125, you can get a little lazy, and you don't have to use the clutch as much. You can get through it. If you don't use the clutch when you need to on this one, it'll compression brake out on you and make a flat stop, and then you got to kick it.
You don't want to stall a 500 in a race.
But it's got so much compression slinging that piston. I mean, it looks like a 350 Chevy piston.
It's massive.
And it was a hell of a bike. And this is a man's bike right here. This isn't any like part-time off-road thing. I'm sure some people bought them for that, but this was a true motocross bike. And I love the color scheme in this particular year too. It was all over the place. Anyway, it's just a cool bike. Like I said, it was the last bike that I raced, and I just thought it needed to be part of my collection. I've got memories of this thing.
I'd say this is the pinnacle of two-stroke, big bore two-stroke development. Nothing ever really surpassed this in my eyes. 30, 40 years later.
I would agree.
And the original one, 1985, was the most powerful one. They kind of detuned it since then. So what is that? It's almost 40 years ago.
Yeah. But, you know, it's a hell of a bike. It had a good seat. You could slide around on it. It was a comfortable, believe it or not, it was a comfortable bike to ride. It was just a handful.
They still are comfortable. I love the ergonomics on this compared to the new aluminum frame bikes.
It sits good for some reason.
You've got I've had back surgery in 2017, and I got extra seat foam on mine. I've got probably 6 inches of seat foam, and the stock one's probably 4.5. I got tall bars on it. I've got lower pegs. I'm a big dude. I'm 6'2", 220. And for me, there is no better fitting motorcycle than a CR. That's why I have one. I've got quite a few bikes, but I absolutely love my CR. I'm hopeful my new 2023 gas 250 that I'm turning to a 500 will make me feel as comfortable as this. We'll see. Stay tuned. But I love these big bore CRs. There's nothing finer in a two-stroke than this bike right here, in my opinion. Chip has a ton of memorabilia up here that would be a whole nother video, not only the history of his company, but some really historic signed photos from like Marilyn Monroe and John Wayne and Johnny Cash, and pretty much some real legends from us growing up. Look at this one right here. This is cool.
Yeah, that was the prop gun and rope that was used in True Grit, and then bar tab that he signed. And
how cool is that?
Yeah, man's man stuff. I like him, Steve McQueen, Clean This With It. Those are my kind of guys.
All true legends. All true legends. Legends and definitely very cool.
This FMF racer?
That's a cool piece. That is just absolutely beautiful. Look at that thing.
This bike, for those of you back in the time, they used to sell these crate racers from FMF, and they came with their porcupine. You could get 3 different stages of porting to the motor. There's the FMF red pipe. There's the gas tank. That's the plastic that went on there instead of the aluminum tank. S&W shocks, FMF swing arm, and basically you're supposed to take this thing and uncrate it, assemble just a few pieces, and go off to the races. And you had a better CR125 than the guy sitting next to you. So it's called an FMF racer.
Most of those were ridden into the ground by high school racers that had nothing better to do but ride 4 to 6 hours a day. And I don't think the 125 motors back there held up as good as the new ones. And even the new ones have a limited lifespan. But I mean, they just need to be rebuilt a lot. A lot of these top ends got taken apart and redone over the years.
Oh yeah, I would redo my piston rings every 7 runs.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to. You were just running the dog snot out of these things, and you know, that's just the way they were. And I've got a picture down there with all the motorcycle pictures behind the truck down there, and it shows this advertisement of the crate.
Oh, I got to see that. I got to see that for sure.
It's an original one.
So yeah, this is definitely a really cool piece. Look at this. You got 8 inches of seat travel. The new bikes have none. You know, they're like a brick. This thing's got.
Well, their tank doesn't exactly fit the way that the Honda tank fit on there. Plus, they sold a seat kit. You remember the seat kits where they put the foam in there?
Yep. I remember guys putting foam on the YZs and the CRs on the tank and wrapping duct tape on it to protect the family jewels. You know.
Yeah.
Here's a piece right here. Look at that, huh?
Yeah,
what a beauty.
There's 6 of these bikes made, and this started off with a TT500 engine, and then they put a new cam in it and some other things, and it won the 500 Open class in '76. And if you notice, there's a whole new frame, the forks. The swing arm is a banana swing arm because they're running such long Öhlins shocks on the back of it, so the bike didn't sit up at too much of an angle.
This is beautiful.
And this was like when thumpers were going full on, and this was, you know, the regular TT500 just wasn't competitive. It was too heavy. And if you notice the fuel tank on that, see how small the fuel tank is? Because they were so fuel efficient. The 4-strokes, that's off of a YZ125. Huh. And they painted them that color, and they just put it on there. And you see the sideways gas cap? Those
Very cool.
That year 125 was known for that, the YZ125.
That's pure
76.
moto art. Stunning piece.
Oh yeah.
And boy, what a sound that thing would make. My God, 540 thumper.
They're all loud, but it's not as loud as a CCM, but it makes a noise.
Yeah, I wonder which would be faster in our drag race. I'd assume the Yamaha would be faster, but who knows? I wouldn't underestimate the CCM.
I don't know. Oh, that one's still covered up. We haven't had the things off of it. I don't know if we can do that one.
We were filming from the floor down there up. Now you get a bird's eye view up here of all these beauties.
Didn't do the one on the very back wall. You might be able to zoom in on him back there.
Oh, wow.
That came from Kaplan too, that Kawasaki way back in the back.
Does that one look familiar, guys? We missed that one.
Yeah. I just kind of polished it up a little bit, and it was a great low mileage bike that I bought from Kaplan, and
that's a beauty.
I just put some new plastic on the sides and the front and the back just because of fading, and kind of changed a few things that I knew were special about, like silencers and so forth, that from Brad Lack. And the thing I like about that bike is that was the first year of the Unitrack system, and Brad Lackey was running for them there and had a lot of input into the single shock bike. Now they didn't sell a lot of those single shock Kawasaki's at first because nobody in their right mind thought one shock would work. And now everybody, known to man, is a single shock cruiser.
Set a new standard.
That bike right there set the standard. That was the first single shock bike sold to the public right there.
Freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you have some big parties up here. I guess you got the big screen TVs. You got it all hooked up.
We do a little football stuff every now and then.
Awesome. Very nice. And we have another special piece over the pool table here. And a couple on the wall that I'm sure you guys will want to see.
This is a replica I created out of a TLR Honda, which kind of has an interesting story behind it. Honda, about the time that 86 ran around, they had won just about everything, whether it be street or GP moto, motocross, anything you could do with a motorcycle. And somebody made a point of saying that, well, you haven't ever won the Trials Championship. So
wrong thing to tell Honda.
Honda just said, all right, so they made this production bike for 2 years, and I think it's 86 through 88 or something like that. Anyway, and then so they went out and hired this hot shot, best trials rider that anybody had ever seen, named Yamamoto, and that is a replica of the HRC bike, the competitive bike that Honda gave out of the factory. And you know, it's got Falcon shocks and see the drilled out brake arms, and the pipe. The paint scheme is exactly the way that it was, using the exact same colors, and and gold handle, everything. You can do research and pull that bike up on the net, but that's kind of a replica to that heritage of that bike.
Very cool. Love the paint job on it, red, white, and blue. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
In Yamamoto, you think of Yamaha, but that was the rider's name.
That was the last name. Yeah, and on the front you can see that's a duplicate of his front plate on the front that I had made. I got a guy that can make up some stuff, and there you go. And
wow.
Of course, the number one represents exactly what it is. You see number one running around here quite a bit, and it's just you go for the best ones.
Honda rose to the challenge, I'd say, huh?
Yeah, they won.
So we got some
Quit making the money.
back here. We've got some true Americana right here. Probably the only all-American, American designed and built dirt bike ever, right?
Yeah, this was
Or one of them.
An ATK was a bike developed by old motocross racers, or not old, they were retired motocross racers. It's a young man's sport, we all know, if you're into it. And they said, we're going to make something that's better than anything the Japanese have, or European, or whatnot. And if you notice on this bike, look right there above the peg, and you can see a red brake caliper. That was the first bike to ever have the brake up front. You'll see some four-wheelers like that and everything else. And you notice the swing arm and the counter sprocket are so close they almost hit. So your pivot point is almost right at each other. And behind the counter sprocket is a disc. And that is a disc brake. When you hit your rear brake in a motocross race, you hear that chain clacking, that clack, 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 when you're locking up the rear brake. Well, that's because your chain is tight on one side, loose on the other side, but you're actually stopping the motor. That's where your most inertia is. And you can stop that lightweight rear end and drag it pretty easy, but you've got to stop the motor when it's connected to the chain. So they stopped it at the motor with a hydraulic brake system. And if you notice that brake underneath that Rotex 250 motor is backwards. And it uses the hydraulic pump right there and goes straight to the brake. And the fins in that motor are so wide, it's like the Can-Am. I mean, the cylinder doesn't start. It's probably 2 inches in there, 2.5 inches, before you even get close to reaching the cylinder floor. And another unique thing is in today's world, like you hear cold air induction on cars, like on Mustangs, Camaros, Corvettes, whatever. If you've ridden a two-stroke, when you're sitting there and they're idle and you give them gas, you get this bogging sensation, then all of a sudden they snap back really quick, high RPM. Well, that's because you got to suck air through the filter going right directly into the carburetor. Well, this bike uses an air box, and it's got a ram air system on it like a car. In front of the tank on the back side, you see that fiberglass going up there, it filters the air up front in that ram air system, and that whole tube and that whole white box, there's no filter in there. That's just air. So when you give it gas, it's spontaneous. It doesn't have to suck air through a filter to build RPM. And so it was very unique in that respect. Now look, it's a one-shock bike, 1992, but the shock is on the gear shifter side of the bike. Can you see the white shock in the back?
Yes.
On the other side? See, it's not in the middle. It's on one side of the swing arm. That was a design that they thought was the best. And so they put one shock over there. You see a lot of street bikes like that now. You know, you see the one shock on the side,
yep,
and the drive shaft on the right side. Well, they came up with the same, I guess, philosophy or engineering that they had. But this is back in '92, and see, the tank is really long on this side where it says ATK. See how it falls almost to the cylinder head? That's because that ram air system's on the other side of the tank. Took up too much of the tank, so they made the tank. It's not evenly distributed on both sides. This is the heavy side. It is extremely lightweight, and it's just a very unique piece. And it was very expensive because it was made in America and because of the low production numbers and so forth and so on. And then ATK later sold to Cannondale, who was very famous for making some of the nicest bicycles around. And then they eventually went out of business on the motorcycle side. But this was the start of the Cannondale motocross bikes.
Very cool piece. Not many around left in that kind of condition. I've had a few come through the shop, but
That one was a raggedy one.
we didn't have the courage to do a frame off on it because we knew that the time and effort we'd invest in it would be triple what it would be worth, and we sold them as is just because of fear of the unknown and parts you can't get. That's a very difficult bike to restore. It's not like doing a CR500 or something where parts are reproduced. That's a rare bird.
Look at the angle of the chain coming down to the counter sprocket.
It's really something else.
Yeah, it was a very unique bike, very competitive bike. A lot of people ride their four-stroke still today, 604s and stuff.
I've had one of those through the shop too. I rode one of those. Very cool piece. So this one underneath here definitely is a beautiful piece too. It just came out of the box.
This is this predates me a little bit, but this is 1978 Maico MC 400, and this was when I was at the motocross. I was racing, and I would see these bikes, and Maico's always amazed me because of the suspension on them. They were by far some of the best suspended bikes ever made, and it also interests me that the cylinder, when it comes down, there's a chain in the motor that runs the counter sprocket. It's not connected by gears. There's a chain there. That's what the case is. But anyway, I found this bike. In fact, this is a Kaplan bike. It is.
This came from our shop? I didn't even recognize it. It doesn't look so much better.
No. Yeah, well, it was a nice bike when I got it, but I took it all the way out of the frame, powder coated the frame, did the whole 9 yards. But this started off in y'all's shop.
Wow. I don't remember it looking nearly this good.
You remember that bike?
Vaguely, yes.
I don't know. I still got pictures in the file for sure.
It looks so much better that it would be hard to recognize it anyways.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I redid the bike and repainted the forks and the valve, cleaned it all up, all everything. Anyway, it was just a point in my life when I remember these Maicos there, and they were very expensive compared to the Japanese bikes, and they had tons of torque. In fact, a lot of people, if you get a Maico 490 Mega 2, they say that's the best twin shock motocross bike ever made. Yeah.
I heard Honda copied the porting on that bike where they reverse engineered it for the CR500.
It was
so
a
good.
monster. And I had one of those bikes. I shouldn't have got rid of it.
They're getting hard to come by, the real ones.
Yep. And the Metzler tires, the whole 9 yards. Those are Metzler tires. I mean, this thing is accurate. You got to have Metzler tires, or you just can't pull it off.
This may be the nicest MC400 I've ever seen. I don't know how it could be better. I mean, every square inch of it looks brand new.
It's all new bolts, all new everything, and there you go.
It's a spectacular piece, man. Fantastic. Here on the wall, this could be a whole nother video, but these are all cars that were part of his collection at one point, correct?
Yeah, these were the selling pieces that were out in front of them when I sold them, and that's a Dale Earnhardt car I owned. That was a 1989 Atlanta Motor Speed champion car. I mean, that set the fastest lap time at Atlanta Motor Speedway to that date.
I'm glad you kept the artwork because it's like, I mean, it's like a timestamp memory that I mean, would have been lost if you didn't keep this artwork. It's
I would
so
have forgot
cool.
the cars that I had.
How many cars do you think in your career of buying and restoring world-class vintage and custom and new cars, how many cars of this caliber, these show type cars, have you owned over the years, Chip?
I've never added them up.
Well, hey, we could add up the posters. We know there's at least 100 of them.
I've never added them up.
And we talked earlier about the amount of time it takes to restore one of these is in the thousands of hours. It's so much work restoring a classic car.
See that 67 Camaro? Now, see, this is what happens to me. I get ahead of myself. That car, if you go down to underneath this thing and you can look at Chevy magazine loaded up, I went so far with all 100% Chevy aftermarket hop-up kits.
This is the car?
This is the same car as that one, and this is a 454 LXR, and it had a 200 shot of nitrous. I was running
Oh my
1,000
God.
horsepower out of that car, and I could not drive it. It would shake, literally shake the whole car.
Oh my God, what a
And
rush.
I couldn't get it through the. I don't like things sticking through the hood, but I had no choice on this because the motor was so massive. And
What a
the
stunning
manifold.
machine.
And as you can see, the nitrous, direct injection nitrous rails right there running into that.
So it was 1,200 horsepower
Yeah.
in a little car like that?
And this is all Chevrolet writing about it. They came and
That's like
interviewed me.
twice the horsepower of the Hellcat.
Yeah.
Twice.
But again, I'm not so sure. That car, if you gave it 3/4 throttle, you were all over the place. I don't know if it would accept.
It would just spin, right?
Right.
This is one of your Corvettes.
Yeah, that's a 427, an L71, 335 horsepower tri-power. That means it had 3 two-barrel carburetors on it. Solid lifter motor, all original.
Most of these cars are probably on a TV show from Maico or one of the other auctions.
Barrett.
They do TV shows when on those, don't they? The Barrett
yeah.
auctions.
Yeah,
So
they cover a lot.
pretty much all these cars have been seen nationally before, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And cars this nice always end up in a collection where they're going to be maintained too. You don't get people driving these into the ground. So it's like when you restore them, you're at least you hope they don't. You're preserving a piece of history, moto
My goal
history.
is to buy one that I don't have to do anything with, but unfortunately, that's not always the case. There's always something. I always say, if you take all the glitz and glamour away from the whole thing, and
Yep.
the movie camera swinging in, and the stars coming in and out, it's a used car sale at the end of the day.
Special used car sale.
And it is, but they're very nice, and the thing that you get is you get to see these cars, or if you don't like the price, don't buy it. But you get to see cars that would not come your way if you did not go into these auctions.
Guys, earlier I was talking to Chip. He has a poster downstairs of 16 cars that he auctioned off with no reserve, and he lost money on some of them. So a lot of times you can actually buy a car that's done for less than it costs to build it, and he made some money on some. It all comes out in the wash, but it's not about the money. You're doing it because you're absolutely obsessed with cars. You wouldn't be there if you weren't, right?
That's exactly right. You're either in it because of the hobby, but if you think you're in it to make money, I don't know, that's a skinny chicken dinner. And it depends on what your level of nice is.
Yep.
I mean, I tend to peeve things, and I'm sure if I was in it to make money, I might have a different attitude towards it. But I just like the history of it. I like the history of cars, and it kind of tells you what was going on in America. I like the motocross stuff. I like the arrows and the different changes and the suspension and all of that. And you know, earlier we were doing a video on the TRX truck that I own.
God, I love that
And
truck.
It's a nice truck. But the suspension that was developed for off-road on motocross was taken over into Baja buggies, into pickup trucks, into the Broncos, and all of those types of things that you see racing in the desert. But if it weren't for motocross and all the time and effort spent in better suspension, I'm not so sure that we would have developed those types of suspension packages for cars and trucks as fast as they did. They had a lot of impact on it. See, there's another history point. And it's just really important to understand that, you know, everything is dependent on something else. Like this right here, this Pantera that I had, it was a great car. I kept it for a number of years. And this was an Italian body with a 351 Cleveland motor in the back. And it had 5 gears, first 5-speed transmission we had over here, and it was the first car that went 160 miles an hour sold as an American car. And if you think about what we were producing in 1974, what in the world is going to compete with that? Nada. But they were very expensive and not a lot sold.
You mentioned the word history, and when you look at what happened to most of these motorcycles here, maybe 1 in 1,000 was preserved. So to me, it's really cool seeing the history preserved. And one of the things that drives me, we talked earlier about why I do these videos. There's some people who will never get the chance to ever see motorcycles like these. Maybe they're overseas or someplace where they don't have access to this, but to share this history and spark fan the flame of the obsession with motorcycles and cars and trucks is what it's all about. And let's face it, we talk about some of these being generational. I'm 57 years old. If I'm lucky, I got another 20 years, right? I mean, everything in here is still going to be maybe 30 if I'm pushing it, and that goes fast. The older I get, the faster it seems to go. And for me, it just really, because what's better in life than performance cars and motorcycles? I can't think of any hobby that is more of an adrenaline rush. When you fired up that TRX, the 700 horse truck, and I was sitting behind it, and you rev the engine, and the same thing with the K5 Blazer and the Hellcat down there. I just literally made the hair stand up on my arms. And the same thing will happen when you fire up the CR125.
They just make that noise. And I used to use castor oil because I like the smell of it.
Oh God, yeah.
It wasn't because of the viscosity. It wasn't because it was the best oil. I use that in Delray and other stuff, but I used to love the smell of that castor oil burning on those 2-strokes.
With the race fuel.
Oh God, it was unbelievable.
We always say it smells better than coffee in the morning, man. Nothing like a cup of coffee and a little race fuel to start your morning. But
see all those tags? Those are also tags off of some of those cars that I had off of some of my cars.
Like most museums, everywhere you look, there's memorabilia from the roof down to the floor. So we missed probably 75% of what's in here. We've only scratching the surface, but these plates these are all custom plates.
There's all kind of collectors. I kind of dabble in a little bit of everything. It's like the Shell Oil sign in here. Those are all porcelain signs for the 50s. They're not plastic and they're not metal. That Sinclair sign, for example, is a never-used stock Sinclair sign from the old Sinclair gas stations right over here. And you just run across this stuff every now and then.
That's a brand new porcelain. It's not a reproduction. That's an actual.
That's an actual one, never used stock. Kind of like you were looking for an old motorcycle part. It says NOS from Honda, 1974.
And the same thing with the Shell sign over here too, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's porcelain. And as you can see where those chains are holding that up, that was where it fit in a box. And those things used to twirl back in the day, around the circles. And that's what that came from.
That porcelain really holds up too. I have a couple of, we restored an 1814 factory in one of the buildings. I pulled a whole bunch of lampshades out that looked black, and I soaked them in simple green and some soap for a couple of days. And the porcelain cleaned up, and I polished it with carnauba wax like brand new. And those are the lamps that we have in the factory today. That porcelain stuff, they don't make stuff like that anymore, for whatever reason.
The old Pegasus sign back there? That's an old Pegasus mobile oil sign from the 50s. I think it's 1956.
That is cool.
Yeah, well, see, there's another thing. I bought that at an auction, and the guy was telling us that it worked and all. I came back there and had to rebuild 50% of it.
Yeah, by his standards, it might have worked, but... Is there a story behind the Ferrari sign there? Where'd that one come from?
I've gone through the Ferraris, and I've done this, that, and the other, and I don't know. I tend to stick to the American cars and the older stuff. And if you're into foreign cars, with the amount of cars that I've rotated through and I've spent, if you get a Porsche 911, tons of variations of that car. There is not another sports car in this world that's going to be much more.
That's the one to have?
It's too agile. They're too damn quick. You get a twin turbo pushing 600 and something like 620 horsepower with ceramic brakes, all-wheel drive, and I don't care what you got.
You got to remember,
you got to beat that. Now, it doesn't look as fancy or anything like that, but I guarantee it'll walk it.
Motul sponsored one of the Porsches at the 24 Hours of Daytona. And Darwin Yeager, the National Motorsports Director for Motul, gave me a signed hand drawn mural of their Porsche. It has a plaid on it, and it looks like a car you could buy out of the showroom floor. They're out there racing it with all the supercars, and it looks like a production car. The body lines are the same as the one you have out there, and they don't seem to have changed much, the body lines over the years. They must have really had a Mona Lisa design right out of the Jump Street, right?
I think it's not. I think it's more of a cult type of thing. They tried to change the 911 in about 2004, I think, and everybody that was a Porsche guy kept calling them scrambled egg cars.
They hated them?
Because they hated the lights weren't round. They kind of were at a diagonal. Oh yeah, and they pulled it. They went back to the round light. They're very, very particular about what they do.
Kind of like the Harley-Davidson V-twin. If Harley makes anything other than the V-twin, it never really seems to go anywhere.
But exactly the same thing.
And it may not even, in Harley's case, it may not even be that great of a design. It's just what people want, you know? If they want performance, they'd buy a better performance. They'd buy a Japanese sport bike or something, but they want that Harley rumble. That's why there's a brand new Harley-Davidson outside. I'm going to ride out of here today. I just love the way it sounds. It's not that fast, 96 horse, but I love it, and that's all that counts, right?
That's exactly right. But I don't know if we've seen this bike with the cover off of it. It just got rehung and repositioned. I've got some other bikes coming from the last week in Las Vegas. Make some room. And once you start jockeying one round, you got to jockey another one around, and it takes a little bit. But this bike right here is a Marty Smith RC replica bike. And it's got various RC factory Honda racing pieces to it. If you look at the swing arm, that real long swing arm, that's an HRC swing arm.
Wow, welded in the middle, you see that?
And you see the tank? It looks very different. That's an HRC 45-minute moto tank.
Big bulb on the top.
It's got that's why it's as big as it is. And it's got an HRC pipe. And the air box in there is fiberglass, and it's an expanded sized air box. It goes around the frame tubes and everything else to increase the size of the air box, so you have more air capacity in there. And the black carburetor, the carburetor and air box on an HRC. And on the front of that number plate, it says 2 chip from Marty Smith.
Wow. On the front number plate?
On the front number plate, and I took pictures of the bike and sent it to him, and I said, can you sign this? This is the bike, and I made it, your number 9 championship bike, blah, blah, blah. And I never heard anything back, so I knew somebody that knew how to get a hold of him. And so I got his wife, and his wife got it signed for me.
Freaking awesome. You got the boss involved. You got to get her. Absolutely. She made it happen.
It says 2 chip on front of it.
She was a real moto enthusiast too over the years. Real shame. Rest in peace, both of them. He was a legend in the sport.
Side by sides. I like that bike, and that was a special memory in my mind. Marty Smith, I followed that guy forever, him and Dick Foster and that whole 9 yards. We talked about some of those riders, but it's every detail on that bike is set up like that. You race the Fox shocks; those aren't just an add-on on a bike. It's just a really, really unique piece. One of my favorite ones that I have here.
Yeah, it's a stunning piece. It'd be tough to pick a favorite out of this pick because so many of them are so historic. You got the Jeff Ford CR125, you got the on any Sunday Husky over there. You've got the first 125 competitive 2-stroke Honda ever made, the Fox bike, the other CR. Which one is that one there? That's a Marty Smith bike right there, right?
Yeah.
The number 1. That's what you got.
That was a Marty Smith replica that he sponsored and helped design and put together, and that's why it's signed on the plate by Marty Smith. And I don't know how many they made of those, but they were for sale. I want to say 2 years ago.
Wow.
It was something that they put together.
Honda Motor Company did that?
No.
Or Marty did it?
Yeah, it was built. It was called an RC replica, 125 replica, and it's got an up pipe, as we were talking about. We did that bike, but it was kind of a special bike.
Then you got your YZ125 racer, the Harley-Davidson 250, one of a handful made, a full-on Mugen works bike right there. '86 CR250, and then of course the Jimmy Ellis signed bike that Can-Am that he won the first Super Bowl of motocross and the AMA National Championship on. So definitely it takes a long time to not only restore each of these bikes, but to collect these significant pieces and put them on display is really a remarkable accomplishment, Chip, and cars and trucks too. Just an amazing facility you have here. Just awesome. Thank you for sharing it with us today.
No problem with it.
I just enjoyed it too.
Yeah. Say hey, Bo. Say hey, Bo.
Guys, before we go, I got to show you this table because I do believe this is one of a kind here. What do we got here, Chip?
We have a Chevy big block, kind of a drag motor. It's been worked all through. I've got it on video running. It's not just a shell and a block. I mean, that is a heavy son of a gun. And it'll shoot fire through the pipes. There's 3 stacks on there. And it's just got a big junior intake on it. It's got a keynote in it. It's got all kinds of stuff on it. And it came out of a Camaro. In fact, remember that Camaro? I did the video on the Camaro up top that had 1,200 horsepower.
Oh yeah.
This wasn't enough for me. So I put a modern thing in there. And if I had this motor in there with the regular set of headers on it, it would probably still be around. But anyway, this is the motor that came out of there.
So what inspired you to make a table out of it?
Well, actually Dennis over there, who's hanging motorcycles, came up with that idea. He goes, what are you going to do with this table, or this motor? And so we started talking around, and he said, well, let's just make a table out of it. So again, back to the fabrication in the shop, this is all fabricated. For this particular motor, we built it here, in-house.
You did the welding and everything right here?
Yeah, and just threw it up and took it to our metal guy, and he welded it all up and bolted everything,
There's another room we covered in another video earlier through that door. Let me just show them real quick because you may not see the other videos, but in this other room, they've got a full restoration shop where they got all the tools of the trade, and they do Chip does full frame up restorations like, right here. They got all the tools and all the space you need and the welders and everything you need to make the magic happen.
Except for when I get out of my arena. There are some people that I am not an expert in anything. I know a little bit about a lot of things. But when it gets to something that needs to be done accurately, I know I have a list of vendors that do it.
So you got painters, you got upholstery guys, you got...
Kind of like that 72 that I covered earlier. I personally wouldn't restore that because I'm better at bikes. I'm much better at bikes. But this car, I don't have the technology. I just don't have the ability to do that. Jeff,
Sorry about that. You were saying about this car?
well, I was just saying, with the value of this car, there's only 35 being made, I wouldn't do it. So Lloyd's Restoration, Chef Brecky, he's a guy I trust to do something like this. I'm not going to do that. It's way above my skill level. Now, modifying four-wheel drive and doing stuff, I've got some people that help, and they really help do it. And as I get further along in doing this type of stuff, I run into special needs, or I figure out how to do stuff, and I'll continue to buy tools or whatnot I need to get it along. So I get better every time.
Sure, and like doing the old CR125s and CR500s, you've been working on those since you were a kid. So
I could lay down and go to sleep, and I could put the gearbox assembly.
Yeah, that's like.
I can get down to the clips and
yeah.
this and that. That's old hat, and that just came from racing. When you race
Sure.
when you're younger, you don't have any money, so you just have to do things yourself.
You do your top end in the pits in between motos if you have to,
Yeah, well, I did mine about every seven races, and at least with new rings. And you take them apart enough, as everybody knows, you can put them back together pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chip, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing collection with us. Guys, thanks for watching. Really, I hope you enjoyed watching us walk through and hear about these amazing bikes and cars as I did filming them. Thanks for watching, and God bless America.